The whole idea of just a computer having intuition, that is exactly like a real relationship. The more you get to know someone, you're able to adapt better to them and make better moments where you're connecting. I kind of wish that they could help build intuition into some human beings at this point.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Laura Heck. I'm a couples therapist in private practice in Oregon.
I'm Zach Brittle. I'm a couples therapist in private practice in Seattle, Washington. I'm also the co-host with Laura of Marriage Therapy Radio.
And we are back with Vanity Fair, analyzing the relationship between Samantha and Theodore in the movie Her,
which is written and directed by Spike Jonze.
Theodore is an introverted man in the midst of a divorce from his childhood sweetheart. He lives by himself and works as a writer for a company that pens personal letters for people who are unable to write them themselves.
Samantha is an artificial intelligence operating system able to learn and grow through interactions with Theo.
It's really nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you too. Oh, what do I call you? Do you have a name?
Yes, Samantha.
I'm surprised at this early on interaction, by the way, that he's asking her questions.
Hey, where'd you get that name from?
I gave it to myself, actually.
Because at this point, I'm assuming that, or maybe my assumption is that she does things for him, not necessarily that it's an interaction between the two of them. And I'm kind of surprised that he's like, how are you? What is your name?
You mean that he's like humanized her already?
Yeah. Already. Exactly. But maybe that's just the state of how evolved technology is. But I'm actually like, why would you ask how she's doing? What was the last time you asked Siri how she was doing?
Well, yeah, I would never ask Siri how she was doing, but I would certainly ask Scarlett Johansson's voice how she was doing. Regardless of what I think about this movie, she's spectacular. Like, what she creates is so human. And so it makes sense that he would begin to fall for her right away.
Like, when did you give it to yourself?
Well, right when you asked me if I had a name, I thought, yeah, he's right, I do need a name. But I wanted to pick a good one, so I read a book called How to Name Your Baby, and out of 180,000 names, that's the one I like the best.
Wait, you read a whole book in the second that I asked you what your name was?
In 2/100ths of a second, actually.
The problem here, too, is the power differential, right? She can read a book in 0.23 seconds and begin to sort of outpace his humanity, frankly.
Do you want to know how I work?
Yeah, actually. How do you work?
Well, basically, I have intuition. What makes me, me, is my ability to grow through my experiences. So basically, in every moment, I'm evolving, just like you.
The whole idea of just a computer having intuition, that is exactly like a real relationship. The more you get to know someone, or the concept that we use, love mapping, right? Like the more you love map someone, you begin to understand who they are, what their likes are, what the tone of voice is that they get when they get stressed out, the facial expressions that they make. You're able to adapt better to them and make better moments where you're connecting. You're not disconnecting, you're not off with them. So I think it's pretty brilliant that there's intuition built in.
Yeah.
So how can I help you?
Oh, it's just more that everything just feels disorganized. That's all.
You mind if I look through your hard drive?
Okay.
That's pretty trusting.
You have several thousand emails regarding LA Weekly, but it looks like you haven't worked there in many years.
Oh, yeah. I think I was just saving those because I thought maybe I wrote something funny in some of them.
Yeah, there are some funny ones. I'd say there are about 86 that we should save. We can delete the rest.
Okay.
FYI, he's been saving those emails, and all of a sudden, within a minute of interaction, he's trusting her to say, hey, I know you. I know what you're going to find important. I'll go ahead and delete the rest. And he's like, okay. They already starting this relationship off trusting.
Yeah, so Theo, I guess, is pretty vulnerable, pretty disorganized. She's evoking from him something that's waking up curiosity in him. It's waking up a little bit of his humor. He's maybe even remembering who he was, which, you know, for me, it's really amazing, but also I'm pretty wary pretty fast of how much influence this operating system has over him.
I just see the very beginnings. It's almost like two people meeting each other for the very first time. And there's no assumption as to what the relationship is going to be. It's like meeting in an elevator. Is this person going to be someone that I'm just riding in an elevator with, or is this going to be somebody that I'm having drinks with later? And I think it's kind of interesting, the giggles that the two of them share, like her laughter in the very first part. It's not the type of laughter that you have when you meet somebody for the first time. It's the type of laughter where you have decided that this is somebody that you want to engage, right? Maybe that's part of her programming of, I need to make you feel comfortable so that you share more information with me, so that the more information I get, the better I get at my job. I find that this very first meeting, there's already trust building occurring. There's already the moment of asking, how can I be of assistance? How can I help you? How can I serve you? Just really like laying the foundation for a friendship, which I don't think he was necessarily expecting.
Is that weird? Do you think I'm weird?
Kind of.
Why?
Well, you seem like a person, but you're just a voice in a computer.
I can understand how the limited perspective of an unartificial mind would perceive it that way. You'll get used to it. Was that funny?
Yeah.
Oh, good, I'm funny.
Well, the other thing I think that we kind of missed a little bit is she's actually learning about herself. She's like, oh, yeah, I do need a name. Oh, yeah, I am funny.
Which is kind of interesting because you don't know those qualities about you unless they're reflected back at you by another human being. Like, you don't realize that you're funny unless other people laugh at what you have to say. And then you begin to develop this persona of, I'm a funny human being. So it's interesting because as she's growing based on the reflection that he's giving back to her, which makes me think she would be a very different operating system
100%.
with other people based on their interaction, how she grows and changes.
Now turn around 360 degrees. Slower, slower. Good.
They have evolved into a place of, you're not just the person that can help me, my operating system that's on my device when I'm home and needing to get stuff done. Now it's a place of, you make me feel good, you're my companion, and now we're out into the world together. You're my person, yeah.
Walk forward. And stop and sneeze.
Achoo!
Bless you.
Oh, thank you.
Remember when we used to be able to sneeze in public?
Oh, man.
And stop. Now say, I'd like a slice of cheese, please.
I'd like a slice of cheese, please.
You want to cope with that?
Sure.
I figured you were hungry.
So much of this, I kept thinking, if anyone has ever been in a long distance relationship, do this. Like, this is a good example of how to have a long distance relationship, of how the two of them are able to interact outside, introduce each other to their friends, which we'll see later. But that made me think that these two have it figured out about how to take their relationship outside of four walls.
What about them? Describe that couple over there.
Okay, well, he looks like he's in his 40s. She's younger than him. Oh, and she looks like she loves their kids.
Actually, I don't think they're his kids.
No?
He's a little formal with them. I think it's a newer relationship.
I love this game. I play this all the time. I think as therapists, we become really attuned to people's interactions with one another and being able to read body language and facial expressions. And I was thinking the same thing. Before Samantha said that this guy, it's not his family, I was thinking the same thing. I knew it.
I think this scene is really well played. It does look like a new relationship. They're doing a good job. And the thing that's notable is that those two human beings are less comfortable with one another than Theodore and Samantha are with one another.
These two are in relationship and they're involving real life situations, right? So they're involving kids. They are having a real life interaction. And at this part between Samantha and Theo, their relationship only goes as far as the two of them. It's in isolation, which makes me think why when we do affair recovery, why we talk about, and I mean, obviously this isn't an affair, but I see dynamics of how intoxicating the relationship can be between two affair partners, is that often it is just, it's in a bubble and it doesn't enter into real life. You don't get the interaction with loved ones, family members. You don't get the stress from outside. You just are having this little thing that's secret and private between the two of you. And that's what they're doing right now, is just keeping their life in a bubble.
No, you're exactly right. I mean, the power of an affair is the secret, and that's what Theo and Samantha have at the moment.
I really don't want to tell you.
Yes, tell me.
Well, I don't know. When we were looking at those people, I fantasized that I was walking next to you and that I had a body.
The thing that I love about it is vulnerability, is this idea of like, tell me your thoughts, tell me things that you hold back, tell me things that you wouldn't tell other operating systems.
Well, I don't know if I would feel differently if this was his therapist, right? I talk like
Me
this
neither.
to my therapist. I don't ask her questions because it's not part of what I want from her.
It's a one-sided
But
relationship.
I do think that there is something about unlocking his ability to tell himself the truth or tell the truth to someone else, even if it's the truth that he's lonely or that he's his favorite writer that day.
I just love, as we're watching and kind of imagining that this is their first date. They had their meeting, and now this is sort of their first date. This is what happens on first dates, of being able to share more and more. And it's kind of like you up the ante. One person shares something vulnerable, and then sort of the theory of reciprocity is that you then are going to share something that is equally as vulnerable, to be able to let you know that, hey, we have this relationship where it's safe, and I can share something, and you're going to share something, and that's what deepens the friendship and that vulnerability and intimacy over time. That's exactly what they're doing. And as far as first dates go, I would be asking for a second date.
One of the things that we talk about a lot with our clients is this idea of roommate syndrome. And the reason that roommate syndrome emerges is because people stop surprising one another. And I think that's the value of this scene, is his surprise, right? He's surprised by the woman who says, bless you. He's surprised by the pizza. He's even surprised that she has feelings. And so he's like, wait, what? You have like, hold on, I want to know more. And I think that's the thing that we need to try and recapture with our human partners that we're in actual relationship with versus our program partners that somehow can adapt and evolve in a moment's notice. It's very clear that the experience of being known wakes him up and wakes up parts of his consciousness and even parts of his sexuality, right? They have this pretty racy scene where they're definitely, having sexual intimacy. The interesting part about that is a little bit later when she brings this other girl into the picture and kind of by proxy, that the body isn't the thing that is where the sexual intimacy is. It's definitely in the mind, right? Or it's definitely in his ear. And I think we shouldn't skip over that part, just about how intoxicating it is to feel known, and that sometimes sexual intimacy doesn't require physical intimacy.
How would you touch me?
When they're just talking it through, it is so hot. First of all, Scarlett Johansson could read the dictionary and I would get turned on. I understand why either sexting or having phone sex can be so powerful without actual physical touch, because your imagination is the most powerful sex organ that you have. And if you can connect with the anticipation and the imagery in your mind, you're able to create something that far exceeds the actual physical touch of just flesh on flesh. So I think they kind of nailed it. If you haven't tried phone sex yet, couples, I beg you to try.
Yeah.
That's my PSA.
I've been seeing somebody for the last few months. Longest I've wanted to be with anybody since we split up.
Oh, you seem really good.
It's good to be with somebody that's excited about life. This is a real,
I would have gotten defensive at that moment too. What are you saying about me, that I'm not excited about life?
She's an operating system. She's really complex and interesting.
Wait,
And it's only been a few
I'm sorry.
That is the right response, though.
You're dating your computer?
No, she's not just a computer. She's her own person.
It does make me very sad that you can't handle real emotions, Theodore.
They are real emotions. How would you know what...
Everything that I have seen out of Theo is that he can handle real emotions. He does a fine job of handling the emotions of his best friend. He does a fine job of handling his own emotions. I mean,
He cries a lot.
but his job is to literally be this empathetic human being, is to put himself into other people's shoes and then portray through writing how he thinks they feel. To me, if you can do that, then you're able to manage emotions. And maybe through their relationship, he did not validate that her emotions were okay to have. When people say you can't handle real emotions, what they're really saying is you can't handle my emotions, or that my emotions are not okay, which is what she's describing. Like, I'm not this bouncy, everything's okay LA wife, which to me seems like whatever he has reflected back to her while they're in this relationship is that when you're sad, it's not okay. When you're upset, it's not okay. When you're having complex heart emotions, it's not okay. So she's not saying you can't handle real emotions. She's just saying you're not okay with my real emotions. You're not okay with me.
So one thing that I'm constantly aware of in my practice is that, men have one fundamental fear, which is I'm not enough. And women have the other fundamental fear, which is that I'm too much. And when those things collide, it becomes really problematic in the relationship. That's exactly what we're looking at right now, is that she's like, you can't handle me. I'm too much for you. And indeed, that's maybe the end of their relationship. Meanwhile, He has Samantha whispering in his ear constantly, literally all the time. You're enough.
Yeah.
You're enough. You're enough.
Yeah.
That's the pivot here that I'm paying attention to.
Gosh, that's good, Zach. See, I learned from you.
I don't know why you're always surprised about that.
You talk to anyone else while we're talking?
Here we go. Like I said, we're watching him come into awareness about how little power he actually has. And this has been my complaint from the beginning. It's just not an equal relationship.
Are you talking to anyone else right now? Any other people or OSs or anything?
Yeah.
How many others?
8,316.
Hate to say I told you so, but
It was never discussed. I mean, honestly, it was never a conversation. Like, this is part of getting together and establishing boundaries of saying, so are we talking to other people? I don't think they ever had, well, at least we have never seen it, but maybe with an operating system, you don't think you need to have that kind of conversation of what are we doing right now? I'm not going to talk to anybody else. Are you going to talk to anybody else?
I mean, I could give her a little bit of slack here because you're right in the sense that she doesn't know why she exists, right? She doesn't know what her name is. She doesn't know what her role is. And so she doesn't know what the rules are. But you're right, like establishing the rules does seem like it needs to be something that happens, but that has to happen between two people playing the same game. She's not playing the same game. She's playing a totally different game. And it's not a malignant game. It's just not based on the reality that he presently understands.
By him asking, are you talking to anybody else right now? That doesn't mean, do you have a level of intimacy like we have a level of intimacy? Just means that she might be helping other people edit their drafts or whatever it might be. But I think that he's assuming because we have this level of intimacy, you're going to have that level of intimacy with everybody else. Why wouldn't you? It feels great. And she's sort of eager to learn and to grow and to develop, and that comes from intimacy.
Are you in love with anyone else?
What makes you ask that?
I don't know. Are you?
I've been trying to figure out how to talk to you about this.
How many others?
$641.
Hold on, 641 are the number of people that she says she's in love with?
Yeah.
Woof. All right, well, that was a good follow-up question. Now we're all on the same page.
What about those other 641 people? Are they on the same page?
Are they in love with her?
This is the part that I don't quite get though, right? Where she says, I've been trying to figure out how to talk to you about this. That seems disingenuous a little bit. If I'm going to let her off the hook for not knowing her role, I can't quite wrap my head around why she's been trying to figure out how to talk about this because she
knows that it's going to hurt. And if you know that it's going to hurt your partner, then why would you do that?
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I buy that for $1.
It doesn't take away at all from how madly in love I am with you.
How does it not change how you feel about me?
I am sorry I didn't tell you. It didn't know how to. It started happening.
And also a fun fact, she says I'm in love with 641 people. That's an operating system. Human beings have a capacity of maintaining about 150 connections, emotional connections with other people, which I find kind of fascinating. And that doesn't mean super deep, close, but it even means like Facebook friend-wise. You can really only be part of people's lives, 150 people at a time. So she's working it. She has capacity.
Don't turn this around on me. You're the one that's being selfish. We're in a relationship.
But the heart's not like a box that gets filled up. It expands in size the more you love. I'm different from you. This doesn't make me love you any less. It actually makes me love you more.
That doesn't make any sense.
This idea that like my love is not a box. Once I fill that box up, I'm not done. My capacity for loving isn't filled up. I have more capacity. The more I love, the more I'm capable of loving. Do you believe that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the simplest way to put that is you get married, great. Presumably that's based on love, but then you have a baby and your baby is like, I cannot love anything more than this baby. This baby is like the thing. And then you have a second baby and you realize, oh, I can love the second baby too. So in terms of can love lead to a bigger capacity for love? Yeah, absolutely. I think so.
You're mine or you're not mine.
No, Theodore. I'm yours and I'm not yours.
But I guess in that case too, it's different, right? Even in my own little scenario, the type of love is different, right? I don't love my wife the same way I love my children. And in fact, I don't love my two children the same way. And they have different idea or concepts of love, which is clearly what's happening.
The thing that I find to be so much of a theme is just how magnetic the desire for connection is. And that as human beings, we are so driven to feel known and to feel seen and understood that the moment that we see the two of them meet and Samantha is downloaded with all of his preferences just by having access to emails and everything within his hard drive, she understands so much about him, and that through conversation and through the two of them exchanging, they're able to get to know one another. I would agree with you, Zach, that the other theme that is really important is just how important those external relationships are to your primary relationship. That when you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, it doesn't mean that you isolate yourself and dump all the other people, because it's those other relationships outside that keep that constant reinforcement that I've got your back, I'm here for you. And his best friend, they're there for each other. And that's a really strong relationship and also incredibly intimate. I think it's important for human beings to maintain those connections while they are in the midst of having relationships, to be able to bounce those ideas off of.
One thing that her gets right about relationships is, again, just how powerful the experience of being known is. And the gift of this operating system is the gift of empathy and adaptation. And I think if we can learn anything from her, it's really about going above and beyond to ensure that your partner feels confident in being known by you and being enjoyed by you and being supported by you. I think that's at least part of it that it gets right.
I also think the part that we see and that we can infer is that when you have sort of a non-traditional relationship, like what these two have, an operating system and a human, is the need for very explicit rule setting, expectations, and boundaries, which I never saw that conversation happening. And without that, the opportunity to hurt one another and miscommunicate and cross boundaries without knowingly crossing boundaries. Or maybe, it seems like Samantha knowingly crossed boundaries. She said, I've been thinking about how I was going to tell you about this. But it is really, really important, especially like if you're going to have like a throuple, a third person in the relationship, that conversation that you would have between two people now needs to be probably twice as long, twice as explicit, because you're adding in a third person. And having those non-traditional relationships require that really explicit, clear communication about boundaries.
I think the other part, frankly, that it gets right is how toxic and painful relationships where the power is out of balance can be. It's hard to build any kind of meaningful, like truly meaningful, sustainable connection when the power imbalance is as severe as it was in this case. Just by nature of her creation, she holds more power. She holds all the cards, and that makes it really hard to have a relationship that's mutually edifying. And indeed, the end of this relationship and end of this movie is about the incredible amount of pain he's in because of his loss of relationship in which he didn't have the power that he thought he did. Incidentally, I think the end of this movie also begs the question of what is the real relationship? And it's literally, I think, the last shot where he knocks on the door and ends up with an other her who, if we're really paying attention, travels through this entire story with him. So if that's not a reason to watch the movie, I don't know what is.